Okay, we welcome you to this the Kalya Perera YouTube channel. Usually we conduct our discussions in Sinhala language, but we are going to have a special program with a very special guest today in English language for the benefits of those who are interested in Sri Lankan politics and more familiar with English language. And so our guest is none other than Dr. Lionel Bopage, who need no introduction, particularly if you are familiar with Sri Lankan political landscape, the recent political history in Sri Lanka. So he is a legendary, figure in the political development, particularly in youth politics in the last, let's say from late 60s to mid 80s. And now he lives in Australia.
Yes.
So so he's briefly has come to Sri Lanka. So then we had a long discussion in Sinhala earlier. So for the benefit of those who listen to us, would like to listen to us in English. So I would like to welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would like to call you as Comrade Lionel. I think you wouldn't mind.
That's right. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, and welcome to the program. And so I would like to ask you that as you know, we are in Sri Lanka. We are living in a very unique period of time in our political history. So we are preparing for a very interesting and important, significant presidential election coming up. So I think you have some strong views about the recent political developments and about this election campaign. Would you like to elaborate on how do you assess the situation and how do you?
Thank you, comrade. Now, actually, I would like to go back to a little bit of history, with regard to elections and how we have reacted to those situations.
Yeah.
One is during all elections, always we have taken some sort of a relative aspect, decisions, sort of as to how we could maintain democratic and human rights or safeguard those rights. Now, we haven't supported any candidate or any political party just because they are going to establish socialism or they are going to completely eradicate whatever happened in the past. So I think this is not only a unique situation today, it is also a critical situation.
Right.
In the sense, if we look at the socio-economic and political crisis we have been facing for the last few years, unless we take steps to change, the future will be, I think, very dangerous.
Right.
It will lead to a dangerous situation where most of the political rights of the people will be taken away. And the current government has taken many steps, have created an environment where they have brought up, enacted repressive laws which could be used to create such a situation. This happened after 1977 when President Jayajawardena became the executive president of Sri Lanka, and he created all those repressive legislative frameworks like Prevention of Terrorism Act and so many others. You know how trade unions were suppressed and all that. So it will be much worse than that situation if we look at the recent activities of President Ranil Wickremesinghe after coming to power, how he suppressed even economic demands of some of the discussion. So I think this situation I consider very important and very critical, and we all need to contribute to changing the existing system.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we will be in serious trouble.
So you, I mean, you very strongly subscribe to the view that that we need a change. I mean that change, particularly the system change, the term, which was quite popular and perhaps would capture the entire the spirit of the popular uprising that we experienced a couple of years ago. And so I mean, if you are thinking about the concrete situation in terms of various political parties, and I mean, of course there are about something like 39 candidates running for the presidency. But of course we know that there are only that can be only few candidates with winning prospects and making some strong contributions to the popular attached to the popular aspiration and so on, the ability to attract significant amount of voters. So out of these I mean major candidates, what's your role? What do you support?
Well, again, going back to a little bit of explanation, I know after the Aragale, there is a lot of discussion about system change. But this system change does not reflect a social transformation as a whole, an economic setup. Rather, I would say the existing system is based on wastage, mismanagement, and corruption, right? And people are fed up with that situation, so they want a change. That is what they call by system change, where people could have a better administrative setup, where people could look forward to a better situation in the country. So that is the expectation. Now, if we try to go beyond that and try to impose from without the social change, like a radical economic transformation, then that will be complete failure from my point of view. So today, if we look at the political situation in Sri Lanka, there is only one force that could sustain such a change. That is the National People's Power, Malima. And the presidential candidate is Comrade Anura Kumara Dissanayake. And I am not a part of NPP or I am not a part of Malima. But I strongly believe that NPP has established so much of strong relations and connections with society, with social layers, with different professional groups. And they are able to carry out the expectations of the people in terms of that system change. So I think the people have a responsibility at this presidential election to vote for NPP and go for this change.
Right. So you endorse the candidacy of Anura Kumara Dissanayake and the NPP leadership. And I think I mean, I would like to ask you a kind of clarification, because as a person you have a very special connection with the Janatha Peramuna People's Liberation Front, which is the major one of probably the major component of the NPP.
Yes.
And so you are a founding member. Not founder, almost. I mean, practical terms. I mean, it's not difficult. So you are a kind of Politburo member, so to say, in during the 71 insurrection, and also, so you have been the general secretary of the party. After from 77 to 83 or so, right? So it's and very close associate of Rohana Wijeweera, and also one of the very few leading figures, so who continued to be loyal to Rohana Wijeweera after the 1971,
Yes.
right? So therefore, you have a very special connection with the JVP, and also there's another side. So you left the JVP in 1981, 83 or 84 rather, and so you had your detachment of the JVP, and so based on probably two important issues. One is this the national issue, the Tamil people issue.
Yes.
So you had a sort of sympathy towards the Tamil people's political demands, right? But JVP later on began to maintain a completely opposite view, and so then different from your view. And so that's one thing. So I think you still haven't changed
I
that
still
position,
the same position,
right?
Yes.
So the one might be wondering as to how so you support a political camp where the JVP occupied the central place. That's one thing. The other thing is that, so I think you are not happy at all with the political strategy that JVP adopted after 83, particularly the armed insurrection, right? And so therefore, with that background, with that history, so how do you endorse the NPP's political approach? And so I mean, particularly in the backdrop of you see a lot of critiques of the NPP, pointing out to that those 87, 89 period, and their past and so on, right?
I would like to go back to some circumstances. Say, for example, in 71, we didn't have any understanding as to the issues of the Tamil-speaking people of the country, or even the Muslim people. Sorry. Now, we were brought up in a rural Sinhala Buddhist sort of social environment, and we knew our problems, but not about the rest of the country. And for the first time, I came to know about the issues. So I came to an understanding about the issues the Tamil people are suffering in 1972 or 73, when I was taken to Bogambara prison to sit for my engineering final exams, and where I met some of the activists of the Tamil students. And they had protested against the constitution 1972 and raised black flags. Just because they raised black flags, they had been detained indefinitely, right, in Bogambara. So I had the opportunity to discuss with them and came to an understanding about their issues. And when I was taken back to Magazine prison, I spoke with Comrade Rohana Wijeweera. At that time, we were developing the policy declaration of the JVP, and I made a good contribution to the development of the national policy that is related to that policy declaration. And we came to a consensus that I think it was policy number 2 of the policy declaration, that we will oppose autocratic centralization as well as autocratic separation. What it meant was the right to self-determination of Tamil people, that they have the right to decide on measures that will be taken affecting their future. Now, it was a democratic measure. Now, we continued with this policy until 1982. After the presidential election, the situation changed because the number of votes Comrade Rohana got was pretty devastating, and there was some trend within the JVP which attributed this defeat to the policy with regard to national question. We adopted the right to self-determination, acceptance of the right to self-determination, and they attributed that Sinhala people didn't vote for the JVP because we accepted the right to self-determination, whereas Tamil people also didn't vote, although we accepted. So that was the situation.
So there's no point in
continuing with this. And again, I would like to emphasize another aspect. In the 1970s, or rather towards the end of 70s and early 80s, there was another movement that was coming up and being built by people like Cyril Matthew and Kamini Sanak and so on, very strong nationalist Sinhala current.
Yeah.
And it was competing with us in the villages,
Yeah.
because we also
Yeah.
came from a rural base,
Yeah.
and there was this competition.
Yeah.
And I think probably some of the leaders may have
Right.
had, an idea that to counter that
Yeah.
current we need to change, right? However, say cutting short, because of the time
Yeah.
issues we have, in 1980, July program was in 1983. 83.
Yeah.
And just before those program, we had a discussion within the Central Committee to decide on this important question, right to self-determination. And I was right through advocating the right to the acceptance of right to self-determination of Tamil people, whereas Comrade Rohana wanted to change.
Yeah.
And my position was defeated, and then at that point I decided to resign from the party, and there were other issues as well.
Yeah.
Now, the position they had taken afterwards is very strange, because they united all the extreme Sinhala nationalist forces to fight the LTTE.
Yeah.
One. The second thing is that that broad front, the JVP was a broad front with all those extreme organizations.
Right. Yeah.
And they were advocating a position where they didn't accept that the Tamil people had special problems because they were Tamils. And they were just emphasizing on economic aspects.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Now, today, if we look at the JVP or the National People's Power, it is an entirely different situation.
Okay, basically what you are saying, I mean, so
In
there's
short,
there's a fundamental difference between
the former JVP
former
and the
JVP
NPP
line and the
NPP line.
Could
Now,
you
this
elaborate
NPP,
on
the current NPP appears to be more open and more consultative, and listening to more professionals' views and so on. Whereas the former
because
JVP,
this is important, Comrade Lionel. Sorry for disturbing. And so there are some strong voices, particularly some left-oriented intellectual and political activists that they're blaming that even I mean, when someone like you, who was very much concerned about the Tamil people's demand and so on, so they are highlighting that they're claiming that there's no difference between the former JVP and the current NPP in terms of the approach towards the Tamil people's democratic rights. Would you buy that argument?
No, I won't buy that argument, in the sense, from outwardly, when you look at the situation, what they advocate is a different position. Today, they are accepting that Tamil people have specific problems just because they are Tamils. One. And they also accept that the 13th Amendment, which was brought up, people without people's consent, as a way of addressing the concerns of the Tamil people, that they will maintain those aspects until they adopt a new constitution. And when they adopt a new constitution, they say that they have to address those issues. So prior to that, they have never mentioned that sort of thing. So by addressing those issues, they will make the demand for separation and whatever other things to disappear. So they are talking about addressing those issues, and this is the first time I have ever heard such a development. So in comparing the former JVP with the current NPP, I think there is a strong difference in their approach, in their policy positions, and the way they want to be open and handle things.
So don't you think that there's another, I would like to add to what you said, that and also when you look at the broader political landscape, I mean, we saw a situation, particularly about 20 years back, particularly at the time when the JVP formed an alliance with the the SLFP, and many other ultra-nationalist groups to form the alliance to defeat the and to challenge the agreement that the government reached, the Ranil Wickremesinghe's government reached with the LTTE to defeat it. So I mean that alliance was completely against the Tamil people's aspiration and so on. But now you see a situation where those extreme nationalist forces are no longer supporting the NPP or the JVP, and so I mean on the contrary, they are very critical about
NPP.
the JVP, the NPP over the same issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I found it extremely interesting, and I mean that I mean these other, I mean they are being criticized both by nationalist extreme and left extreme.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So isn't that ironical?
Yes, that's
paradox.
Right. Yes. Actually, if we look at the structure of that whatever the broader coalition they had in the 80s and the broader coalition they have now as the NPP, they are completely different.
Yeah.
The previous one was based on nationalism, ultranationalism, and a combination of all those forces together.
Yeah.
Whereas today, they don't have such nationalist forces in their coalition, or rather the broad front. They have more progressive people.
Yeah.
Those people who have represented progressive views right throughout their lives, right? And so we can't compare the two.
Yeah. Right.
So this is a new development, and I think we need to see this as a positive development for building a united country where people can live as equals with equal rights, and where everyone will get the same opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mean, and also I see another side. I mean, when you look at the northern political landscape now after the the war is over.
Yeah.
Whatever the way, whether we agree with the way in which war was ended or not. So that's past. That's it. And now actually, when you look at the situation now, I mean, I don't think that there's any significant, political force in the north propagating a separation, separate state, and so on. So what is needed, the kind of some kind of political arrangement within a kind of one political country. One political, system, one within one country, and so in other words, you need some kind of a bridge between moderate forces in both sides.
Yes.
So I think, isn't that a new context where this kind of force like NPP has a role to play?
Yeah, the current situation is, I think, it is unique, as you said, because sort of say previously both sides had very extreme forces, contesting each other, looking at them as enemies and trying to conquer each other. Now the situation has changed, especially after Aragalaya. I think there was a lot of development in terms of consciousness that there are issues that we need to address. And then only we can come to some sort of consensus. So there is an opportunity for us to be more compromising, more understanding, and be consultative. And I think NPP has provided that environment for us to do that. And in terms of the future, I think we can, if we make this situation constructively and positively, we would be able to develop a country where everybody will be able to live as equals with the same opportunity.
Right. So I would like to come to the other crucial issue. So that is the violent past of the JVP, and so one of the major allegation that you find very often in the propaganda campaign, the election propaganda. So I mean, you can easily, see them as some propaganda, tools. But but they are probably people would like to know more about
Yes.
these aspects. So there's a kind of the fear consciousness trying to be created among people, that well, there's a possibility of going back to the violent
Violence.
political behavior if they come to power, particularly in handling the opposition and so on. So do you see there is a the practically there is a possibility, I mean, perhaps is there any prospect of going to that kind of violent tactics?
Now, I don't see
Yeah.
that sort of an environment, but I think we need to compare and contrast
Yeah.
the situations. Say, although the ruling elite or the governments blame the other parties as those who are terrorists or
Yeah.
who created violence and all that, it is always the ruling parties or ruling elite who have initiated violence.
Yeah.
Say, for example, in
So what you're
1940
saying, basically there's a dialectical relationship
relationship
between so it
what
is not a kind
one-
of one
one party acting alone.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Now, in the history, if you look at the history, in 1947, during the elections, Comrade Rohana Wijeweera's father worked for Comrade Premlal Kumarasiri. I think it was Hakmana or somewhere.
yeah, Hakman,
And
yeah.
the UNPS, somewhere,
Yeah.
they attacked
Yeah.
his father. And
He
he
became
was
permanently paralyzed. Yeah.
until
Yeah.
his death.
Yeah.
So violence was
Yeah.
part of
Very
that
much part of
ruling
that. Yeah.
regime,
Yeah.
right? And I saw that in 1977, 1950s, and and
So there was a kind of systematic marginalization of particularly young rural groups
Yes.
from political process. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So today that environment is sort of, we can see where, if we again go back, the most of those groups who were suppressed were not very strong.
Yeah.
They were small groups which were sort of trying to gain momentum, building strength. So as soon as the government saw them as a threat, they suppressed us,
Yeah.
right? Now today the environment is completely different,
Right.
in the sense the NPP has grown to such an extent
Right.
that they are a wide force,
Yeah.
recognized
Right.
by people. Those days we advocated just society or equal rights for people, and people didn't listen.
Yeah.
People didn't want that. But today people are demanding
Yeah.
that. People want
Yeah.
better
So
opportunity.
in other words, so it is no longer a clandestine
Yes.
small group led by youth as in the let's say pre 1990 era. Now it's and also there's a kind of reciprocity,
Yes.
there's a kind of organic link between the movement, the NPP and their leadership and the people,
Yes,
isn't
that's
that
right.
what you are arguing?
That's what. Yes,
Yeah.
that's what. Yes.
Yeah.
Previously, due to many factors, including psychological operations, used by the government, the other layers of society, other than this small group of youth, they were completely alienated, right? Whereas today, it is completely different.
Yeah.
I think the elderly people, the young people, even the students, they are all together in this now. They want the change, right? So I think this is a very positive development in terms of comparison. So the tendency or the probability for violence is very much low, minimum, I would say, in these circumstances.
So in other words, when you are looking at particularly in the last 30 years or 35 years or so, since 1989, the violence before 1990 was mainly because that they advocated a policy to capture the state power through a armed struggle. But now actually it's a different situation.
Yes.
They are they have become a mainstream political party, and so they have close organic connections with the masses, and also it's no longer, as I said earlier, not a youth clandestine youth movement. So there are a lot of elderly people, and much more mature, widespread organization, and so on. So
there are many
therefore,
differences actually.
I mean,
the probability is minimum. But say if we go back again to 1970s, internationally there was a very repressive environment in the sense that I could remember in Asia, Africa, and Latin America there were more than 50 military or autocratic regimes that had been established by the CIA to protect the interests of the American regimes. And so Jayajavardhana was part of that that framework, and he was advocating for the abolition of elections for 20 years. And so that environment. Now today there is no, I mean, we don't know.
So in other words, those days, I mean, this the capturing state power through a armed struggle is a kind of internationally accepted norm, or sort of, So you had very well recognized legendary leaders like Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, and Nicaraguan, this Sandinista movement and all kind of things. But now that's no longer the spirit of the time. That's belong to a particular era.
At that time, it was not only the JVP. There was many groups that came into being at that particular time. I think Kalyananda Tiranakrama's group, then Perediga Sulang by Gamini Yapa and Sumit Devenura's group. They were all advocating the similar.
So that means that this violent tactic belonging to a particular era. It's not
was symbolic of that era.
Right. Well,
even if you look at, say, what happened in 1983 or 89 period, the violence was initiated by the regime. In 83, Black July program, sort of that was used to proscribe the JVP, and that situation led to the 88-89 situation, and the primary responsibility lies with the government for that violence. And then it also led to the 30-year war. The LTT became strong only after the program.
So perhaps one might, maybe a critic may ask that, whether you are trying to sort of whitewash the JVP for, and so they're claiming that they are not responsible for. Would you argue that,
No, I'm not trying to whitewash, basically. What I'm saying is basically everything that happened has to be understood in that context.
Right.
Right. So there were some mistakes which we have committed because we were not mature, we were young people, and we didn't have any experience. So we were facing a first time thing. So probably it would have been better if we didn't react the way we reacted in 1971. But the primary responsibility for all that happened lies with the government, who declared that the JVP was public enemy number one, and it has to be exterminated, and they took measures to do that.
Okay, so I mean, before ending the program, I would like to ask you one more question, so which is also important, because this endorsing a political party is not simply to sort of so they are going to form a government, if the NPP wins, they have to form a government, and so they have to address the burning issues of the people, right? So one of the criticisms by the opponents of the NPP is that so they the only governing the way of governance that they know is that the old type of socialist, so-called socialist approach, which Sri Lanka practiced according to what critics said during 77 period, so which has been a kind of perceived to be a disaster, and also the Soviet model thing, and perhaps Some people, think that, the JVP will go back to that model.
Yeah.
Do you think that, there's a possibility of going back to that model?
No, because we have historical experiences, even with regard to the Soviet Union or China or even most recently Venezuela, Cuba, and so on. In most of those countries, uh, there is a vibrant experience that people cannot be forced into socialism.
Right.
We have to go with the people, what the people's expectations are. And especially, say, for example, the people who are in power are associated with all the corrupt practices, all the mismanagement, all the wastage that is a part and parcel of that system, right? So we cannot expect any change from those people. Those people have been in power in the last 70 odd years in Sri Lanka. So it is a new set of people with a new vision, new set of policies that will always generate that momentum for change.
Yeah.
And the system where wastage would be minimum, mismanagement would be minimum, corruption would be minimum, that can be built up only by a new set of people. So I think under the current circumstances, the NPP is the best club to.
So if I recap what you said, as I understood, maybe out of my bias as well. So what you say is that basically, even there's a popular demand for system change. I remember even recently, I think Mrs. Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, so is not a supporter of NPP, by any means, I guess. So she also said that, making a statement regarding her, part in the election campaign, is that she is not supporting any candidate.
Yeah.
But she said that, we have to take into consideration the demands of the struggle, the mass uprising, particularly the demand for system change. Right? So which means that, we need a political agent. So who can represent that, as people's aspiration for a system change. I think what you're arguing is that NPP is the best available candidate for that. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree totally.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Bopage. And so, thank you so much for your contribution, and I think we are very happy to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to our discussion.